I want to offer you a few statistics that will give you a sense of why it's so important to even have this conversation, why it's needed to have this conversation. For every, Latinas in the US make 57 cents for every dollar that white non-Hispanic men make. For every 100 men promoted to manager, 68 Latinas are promoted to manager. And when it comes to senior level positions, Latinas represent 3%, while white non-Hispanics make 66%, or represent 66%. This is not reflective of our community, and certainly not reflective of our capabilities as women that we have shown and demonstrated in so many aspects, including, and most importantly, in our homes, that we are leaders already. So why is this the case? And we're going to go straight to the point and have a very solutions-oriented, task-driven conversation with these women who are laser-focused, because we prepped before this. We've even assigned questions so we can make this concise and we can really make this a meaningful conversation. So I want to start with Allison. Allison Tuman-Camphouse from Procter & Gamble. Tell us, how can we effectively act to combat and remove those barriers from Hispanic community that we face, specifically in the Hispanic community, with regards to gender equity within our culture and then the society at large?
It's an excellent question. Hi, Natalia. Thank you for having me, and thank you, Claudia, for the invitation. Procter & Gamble is a very proud partner of We Are All Human and the Hispanic Leadership Summit. And I'm delighted and honored to be here with these Latina women who are all powerhouses. I am an ally of theirs, and at Procter & Gamble, we are here in the sense as a business, a company of brands, many of which you know, and I hope you all have in your homes, as a ally to this, but also very focused on what we can do in our business. And this audience is comprised of people from all different industries and all different sectors. So I'll share with you just a couple examples of where we've tackled this and ask you to think about it in your own industry or your own business, how you can reapply some of the ideas that I'll offer, which are, for us, the products we make that are in your homes, we are looking to make it as easy as possible for anyone to use them so that we can liberate the time of people in the home so that they can go out into society and do more. So that is one thing that we try to do through our innovation. The other thing we do, a huge part of our business, of course, is marketing and communications. Brand management is a huge effort for us, but what we portray in the images we create, it gives us an incredible opportunity to represent Latinas in their truest, most authentic selves without stereotyping, without diminishing, without all the things that create these biases in society that then in turn limit the trajectory of Latinas out in the world today. And so, you know, through our brands, who they choose as their influencers, who they choose as the representation in their advertising that we make, and who actually they show doing things in the household, those all have an impact. So we are committed across all of our company to ensure that we are showing Latinas in their truest, you know, leadership selves, both in the home and outside, and that we show men, Latino men in the homes, taking on some of these tasks as well, so that that will, you know, help to create images that people will see, and it will help counteract some of the biases that create these, you know, societal barriers for Latina women in the world, not just in their, you know, in the community, but in the workplace, and why we see the numbers that Natalia shared. So it's what we try to do in our materials and things that we create. And I ask you, even if you're not one of the world's largest advertisers like we are, you still create in your company's marketing and communication materials. If you're a B2B company, how are you representing the complete set of your workforce in what you create and share in the world? Because it doesn't always have to be just a commercial you see on TV. It's how you represent what your business provides to the world. So those are just a couple ideas.
Yeah, Allison, can we go one step further? I'd like to know, do you think there's a way we can take collective action across industries and sectors? So, you know, it's great that Procter & Gamble's doing that, but how can everyone join forces?
Right. It's not enough what we're doing alone. We absolutely must bring it together. And this is why this event and some of the programs you've heard about, the video interludes in between these really dynamic panels are so important. We've taken this approach across all of our equality and inclusion efforts, but particularly our work in the Latino and Latina community is to really bring together collaborators, join collectively, join with other companies to support the scholarships for nurses that you heard about earlier, bring groups together like Porteristas who are really trying to advance the power of Latinas in society, and make sure that when we come together, we don't just do it one-to-one, but we bring all these groups together, because collectively we can progress much faster. So you'll hear more about that tomorrow in another one of the sessions in tomorrow's panels.
Thank you so much. And now I'm going to go with Cindy Benavides, CEO of LULAC. Yes. Cindy, who are the key stakeholders that are working to advance in this area in terms of gender equality within the Hispanic community? And is there anyone else that we haven't tapped or that we haven't asked enough of?
Thank you for that. Y Claudia, muchísimas gracias por tu amistad y por todo lo que tú haces. And thank you to all of you for hanging tight, for being guerreros, for still being here and listening to all of us. And I would say that when you empower Latinas, you empower America. When you empower women, you empower the world. And so as we think of key stakeholders, you know, there's always looking at that traditional model, and that's where we have to break down these systems and start thinking outside of the box. The fact is that Equal Pay, the Equal Pay Act passed under President Kennedy in the 1960s. In the 1960s, and 60 years later, we're still fighting for equal pay for Latinas. It takes us almost until November of the next year to be able to catch up to the counterparts, our white Caucasian counterparts. And so as we think of stakeholders, there's a role that nonprofits play. I can tell you that I love being the chief troublemaker of LULAC and advocating por nuestra comunidad, right? Because it does take up speaking up. It takes being loud. It takes demanding. I would also say that government plays a role, and we just saw in California AB 979, where so many groups came together to demand that ethnic minorities be on the boards of public corporations headquartered in California. By the way, a state where we're 38% of the population and we're still being left behind. It takes making sure that we continue to find accountability and hold folks accountable. It takes us as Latinos, as consumers, going to these corporations who profit from us, market to us, and standing up and saying, you do not have a Latino on your board. And I know that you talked about representation, Aussie, but as we think of gender equality, it's far more less for Latinas. And so part of what we're looking at is how do we also look at the legal justice system. In the 1990s, 1998, in fact, we finally saw through the legal judicial system sexual harassment, holding corporations in terms of sexual harassment, because we saw that too often happening to Latinas. But I would say there's so much more to learn in terms of lessons, right? When we see the indigenous Latina movement, women movement in Mexico, making sure that we continue to uplift and amplify what our brothers and sisters are doing, and also the UN, por ella, right? For our male counterparts here, we need you in this movement. You also have daughters and sisters and mothers and people who you need to advocate for. And I know that so many of you already do this, right? Shout out to Dr. Andrade for saying, Cindy, you need to be the chair of this organization. Shout out to Tony Tijerino, who said, hermana, you're going to be a CEO, and he spoke life into me. And so we also need nuestros hermanos en la lucha to be there. And lastly, I would say, as I think, Natalia, of who to uplift, Monica Ramirez, with our migrant women workers, who is doing God's work, amplifying the needs of our migrant women, women who literally take out the weeds and plant seeds so that all of us could be nourished, to making sure that America is fed. And so when we think about the power of Latinas and the power of women, we are it. America, we are your destiny.
That's so.
I loved everything you said, especially the part about enjoying being a troublemaker.
I've been holding it in all day.
We can tell. Some people have been holding it on their whole lives. So thank you for standing up and advocating for those people, for those women. I'd want to continue now with Ana Flores. She's CEO and founder of We All Grow Latina. Ana, what are some examples that you have experienced? We know that you are a powerhouse when it comes to community, organization, grassroots, and you're a woman, a Hispanic woman in this country. What can you tell us, what has worked? What have you seen that's worked, and perhaps what hasn't worked?
So hard to follow Cindy. So increíble. You know what? Actually, I'm so glad you mentioned Monica Ramirez because she was somebody I was going to mention. Monica Ramirez, not only with Justice for Migrant Women, but also the work that she has done advancing Latino Equal Pay Day. She really has been the one, I think, that has brought us together under that umbrella of understanding and bringing awareness of what Latino Equal Pay truly means. So let's focus on that because that is really where I see where we're talking about gender equality. Really, it comes down, as we know, finances, money. We're the ones bringing in the money. But so we say 57 cents to the dollar a white Hispanic man makes. That means we are at the bottom of the totem pole. We are the ones at the bottom. So let's think about when we are celebrating, when you see the next news media cycle come back in March and we're celebrating average equal pay day for all women, notice that Latinas are never mentioned. And that is something that I want to put on the table, Claudia. How can we work together to make sure that when that day comes around, Latinas are at the top of the conversation because we're not going to be equal until we are equal, until we make it to the top, right? And that's been something I'm noticing for years and figuring out how can we bring that conversation to the table and really make it about the ones that are on the bottom and the ones that are at the top, which is us at the top, moving this country socially, economically, and politically. To that note, what we have seen, and it's something that I want to mention that even though We All Grow Latina led it with, it's because we did it with ACE. Patricia Mota, you're here? Patricia, you'll be hearing from her later. I actually met Patricia thanks to We Are All Human, and she reached out to see in which ways we could collaborate. So ACE is the Hispanic Association for Career Enhancement, right? Yes. And she reached out to me and I was like, listen, I think really the most important thing to do is to come together and what our strengths are and complement our weaknesses. And in that case, Latino Equal Pay Day is such an important thing for us and we've been advancing it for years now. And really it was about bringing awareness. It was insane to me when we started really talking about it in our social media channels 3-4 years ago, that really just the fact that we were talking about it and bringing awareness was already causing a change at the community level, because that's really where the focus has to be, the community level, because government moves slow, corporations move slow, but we know what we need to do to advance each other. So just bringing awareness was equipping women with what they needed to go and negotiate for themselves. So just to ask their peers, how much are you making? And realizing that they're making $40,000 less than their white woman peer. And so we realized that for this, we were raising awareness for so many years, and this year we wanted to take it to another level and actually provide negotiation skills. So we partner with ACE to put together a negotiation mastery skill. They have the resources to put together those, that type of training course, and we had the community that needed it. We put it together in like 3 weeks, and I think it was we announced it for Latino Equal Pay Day. We're like, we're actually giving you resources, and we had 500 applications within 24 hours. The cohort was only for 100 women. Those 100 women now, the results that we have seen is just how eager they were and how thankful they were that they were getting this direct, they were being seen, they were being heard, and they were given the resources and the community that they needed, because we know that sisterhood matters. So it's not only how are we going to teach you what to do, but you need that cheerleader. We're like cheerleaders. Well, you need those cheerleaders that are like, okay, how are we going to do it? We're going to do it. And that is what we want to see. We want to see more of all of you here that are so powerful, that have access to build all these tables, to open those doors, let's focus on the communities of women who have been doing it for such a long time. We All Grow Latina has been around for 11 years. We are self-funded, but it's not about us. It's about all the communities that we see. I have a list here because Latinas in Tech, Latinista, Yo Soy Afro-Latina, Latinas in HR, Latinas in Beauty Official, Luz Collective. I mean, there's so many that we're doing it. We're not nonprofits, most of us. We're doing it with what we can and the resources that we have. And if you want to advance, go to the communities because we are already doing the work.
That's extremely important, and I want to applaud you and your organization for doing that, because I think that negotiation skills at all levels of everyone's career, and I think especially when it comes to women, because traditionally we have not been taught that. Nobody has formally sat us down, whether it be our fathers, our families, or whoever, right, and taken us under their wing to be able to develop that. So thank you, Ana. I would like to continue with Beatrice Acevedo, CEO and founder of Summa Wealth. Yes. Beatriz, cuéntanos. What other activities do you find we need to either increase, we need to stop, or we need to start from scratch?
I want to add a little bit to what Ana was saying and the whole conversation about Latino Equal Pay, just very quickly. We keep hearing how very little to the dollar Latinas make, but I kind of want to throw out the math of what that means collectively. So there are about 30 million Latinas in this country. Each Latina is going to make, on average, $1.1 million less in their 40-year productive career. So that means this inequitable pay that we have is a $30 trillion pay gap. This is not a Latina problem. This is not a Latino problem. This is an American problem for the economy. So I want us to also focus on, yes, obviously giving all the skills that Latinas need to be able to be better negotiators, but also to bring this to what does this mean for the economy? What does this mean for our allies? I usually talk a lot about equal pay in rooms where there's not one Latino in the room. And on purpose, I say, why should you care? Here I am to tell you why you care. You care because just the $30 trillion that Latinas are going to be robbed in their 40-year productive career mean about $10 trillion in taxes that are not going to your kids' schools, to the parks, to the hospitals, to Social Security. So it's a problem for all Americans. So it's very, very important that aside of talking about the inequitably pay that Latinas have, and by the way, when people think, I had this horrible comment that this idiot guy posted on my LinkedIn the other day saying, oh, you guys make less because you're stealing our jobs and you're the maids, and on LinkedIn this was this message, and I'm thinking, no, idiot, like these women make less even if they went to Harvard. I mean, there is data that shows that a Latina next to a Latino going to medical school, graduating top of her class, still in that gap of the $1.1 million less in their productive career. So it cuts across from being a doctor to being an attorney to being somebody who can help clean your home. So it's for everybody. So I do want us to kind of think about, when we talk to our allies about Latina Equal Pay Day, how much America is losing by not paying Latinas equitably. Now, on the very tactical part that we were asked to do on our call, I'm going to very quickly go through a few things that everybody here can do starting today, right? Today. And I love it because I heard so many commitments earlier from so many people with the title of CEO, founder, president, head of my division. Amazing. Because that means we're in a room filled of powerful people, and with power comes a lot of responsibility. Everybody here that sits in a position of privilege can start doing this today. If you sit on a board, make sure that there is representation. We've heard about it all day, but I'm always looking at the numbers. I always raise my hand and say, where are the Latinos? Where are the Latinas? The answer sometimes is, well, you're here. I'm like, yes, but I'm not 20% represented on this board. If you need lists, I quickly point them to Ozzy or to Esther. There's thousands of Latinos who are capable to be on your boards. So boards are very important because that's where the decisions are made. Something else with people who are maybe not ready to be on boards. I do this with all my female staff. I ask the chairmen of my boards if I can bring observers, and I always bring a couple of Latinas. My first board, I was mortified. It was the venture capitalist. I had no idea if I should stand, if I should sit, if I should make a joke, how long do I talk to. It was my first board ever in the US, and I was like a fish out of water, like La India Maria when she comes to the US. It was terrible. So I never want any other Latina to feel the way I did a few years back, and I bring them up. I make them present to the board. Yes, the director of a division, maybe she's not in the C-level, but you start training them, you start giving them that space, giving them that room to grow and for other people to see them and to consider them for future opportunities. So bring them in as observers. They don't need to be a director, they don't need to vote, but that is a request that you can make on boards that you serve on. Also, if you are the darling of press, if you're always on the press and people always want to interview you, bring somebody else to those interviews with you. I bring my CTO, my head of product development, all the Latinas in tech that work with me. They do exist, they're not unicorns. You can bring them in the interview. They always will want you, but you say, yes, but this is something about our app that we're talking about, and my head of product is going to also be answering some of these questions. So give up your space and give up that time to the next generation of Latina leaders. That is how we make room for them. And at conferences, here we're very lucky, we're all Latinos, but there's some conferences, not to be named, where it is all the exact same male cookie cutter person and potentially me or Claudia or Ana or somebody here. And that's again another place where you're like, listen, I feel very uncomfortable being the only woman, Latina, person of color on this panel or on this manel. Here's a list. So have your list ready to go to press send, where you have Latinos and Latinas from every sector and every area to share with people. And I think, you know, doing a few things like that will always, oh, one more other thing, plus ones, super important, right? I mean, I love my husband, but I rarely invite him to big public events. I always invite a Latina to be my plus one. I walk her around the room, I make introductions to her, and that goes a very long way. Or very important meetings. You know, one time I was having a meeting with the CEO of L'Oreal in LA, and the woman who headed up my editorial was, I don't know, 28 years old, never been to New York. And I'm like, you're going to present to the CEO. And she was beyond mortified. You know, she was like, I can't do this. I'm like, you could do it. We did some coaching. I sat next to her, and she did an incredible job. So as much as you can also do that training on the spot for the next generation, particularly of Latina leaders, that's how we're going to secure the place that we deserve in America.
Beatrice, you're the boss I always wanted to have, I just have to tell you. Seriously, that is amazing, and I think that that's part of my segue to my next question. I'm going to throw a little curveball because this one we did not prep, guys. So there's room for improvisation. We're all, most of us here are in leadership positions. We've gotten to a certain level in our career. So yes, it's extremely important for people like us to have these conversations because they're the decision makers, that people can make change. But what advice do you have for the junior or entry-level Hispanic women who are starting out their career, starting out as a student, studying a career? How can they be mentored? How can they find someone? How can they try to break that glass ceiling?
That's for me or for everyone?
For whoever.
Oh yeah, I spoke a lot, so I'm gonna give up the mic for the other ladies.
I can start off, and really, I think this is more internal and personal, and it's don't give your power away. Oftentimes, as Latinas, as Latinos, we give our power away. We have to be clear in our own mindset that they are lucky to have us. We are 20% of the population. Sometimes we're multilingual, Spanish, French, Arabic, English, and Spanglish on top of that. And, you know, as I think of what more could we be doing, to your question, Natalia, I have my 4-year-old America. I may be the chief troublemaker at LULAC, but I can tell you America is the head chief in mi casa. And, you know, making sure that we speak life into each other, even as peers. We are queen warriors, right? Princesa warriors is what mi abuelita used to call me. Eres mi princesita y mi guerrera, in the same sentence. And so making sure that we understand our own power is very important. And I know this is a very grassroots exercise, but I'm going to do it with you. Who has the power? We have the power. Who has the power? We have the power. You have to believe it. Who has the power? We have the power. Who has the power? We have the power. You have to do it like your life depends on it. Who has the power? We have the power. Who has the power? We have the power. You better believe it.
I think like a perfect segue to that, while everybody's very pumped up, is exactly that, right? Like a lot of people are like, I feel, very anxious being the only woman in the room. I feel very small being the only Latina. I feel very intimidated with all these venture capital men. I feel, no, it's the opposite. You walk into a room full of sameness and there's no one like you. That's where your power comes from. There is nobody like you in that room. Your insights, your background, your point of view, your struggle, everything about it is incredibly valuable. So walk on into those rooms and take up as much space as you possibly can. I always say walk in with a lot of white man swagger. When people say, how did you do it? I'm like, with a lot of white man swagger. But honestly, we are so valuable to this country. We're so valuable to this economy. Our contributions are unparalleled. We have to walk with our heads up. We got to teach our kids at home what an incredible blessing it is to be a Latino and how this country would not be what it is without us. So walk with pride, take up the space, and you know what? We deserve it. So we have to pump each other up. And this is an incredible panel that I'm going to go out of here and be like, we have the power.
So with that, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. We have ended 10 seconds exactly before our deadline. Great job, ladies. Thank you.